Hey, Kathy.
Hello.
Kathy, did you get any questions before the meeting tonight with the Board of Ed? I think you got the motion, which is right off that approval sheet. Any questions while we got a minute?
No, I don't think so. We, I was just discussing with the member who's going to read the motion.
All right, we'll call this meeting of the Mansfield School Building Committee to order. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the September 23 meeting minutes. Is there a motion regarding approving the September 23 minutes? Chris, thank you. Second, Kathy, any corrections or discussion? If not, then all in favor of approving the minutes, please give me a sign. Any opposed or any abstentions? Mary is abstaining.
I'm
Okay.
abstaining, right, because I wasn't there.
Okay. That brings us then to our OPM update. So Adam or Scott?
So got a couple items just to kind of go over tonight. General status, discussion of betterments, an update on the tree removal RFP, and then some discussion of the unsuitable soils that we've touched on and off over the past couple of months. In general, on the site, as I'm sure Al will point out in a little bit, a lot of steel has started going up, so you can start seeing some of the structure and bones of the building, which is always exciting. They're wrapping up some of the geothermal well drilling on the northern portion of the site, and then a lot of just the continuation of finishing up concrete foundation pours and placing of soils and prepping, that sort of thing. But the next big stage of the building has been progressing insofar as the steel erection is concerned. One item that did come up was in terms of procurement. If you recall, every once in a while we've talked about pinging Newfield and the subcontractors to talk about making sure that products and materiality are on track and on time to get put into the building on time. We did hear that there was some potential delays with some of the metal deck. We're still looking at what the impact that might mean for the project. And Newfield's looking at the schedule and going to analyze it that way. But just want to bring you up to speed that that's something we're starting to hear. So we're jumping on it and seeing what that might mean for the schedule moving forward. In terms of
Question
yeah.
from Chris.
Yeah, I read something somewhere, I think, about one of the casings cracking in one of the wells. Is this?
Yeah,
I'm
so
not imagining it. Good, okay.
Yeah, so that in the geothermal wells, they basically drill down and it's a solid casing up, and so if there's a crack in it, they can't utilize it for part of the heating system. So 3 of them had cracks in them, but they identified 3 locations at the end of the rows because they're sort of drilled in rows. So 3 additional locations that they can use to just drill new wells. So those locations were approved by the engineers, and it doesn't appear to impact the schedule. Al, do you have anything else on that one, or does that sound about right?
Oh, that's about right. We had 3 wells that were fractured because they test them before we can actually use them. We got locations for 3 new ones. They're drilled. They should finish up this week. They've already started piping. They started piping today.
So related to that, once the cracked ones, they're just simply abandoned?
Yes.
I thought the wells were filled with some sort of packing material. Is that true? Like a stone dusty sort of again packed material. They put the pipe down there and shove this other stuff in there too. Is that how is this done?
Well, there's some grout material that's in all the wells, but that's for looser soils. You know what I mean? Kind of forms a cement lining
Right.
for the hole, for the drilled hole.
So, but the transfer itself, it's basically a I don't know, ABS line going down. Is that what it is?
Correct. Yep.
And then it just does a loop and comes back up again. Is that surrounded by the grout, right?
I'm sorry, Chris.
That piping is surrounded by grout. Is that true? the plastic piping, my understanding was that the plastic piping basically gets around it, gets packed, that grout that you mentioned. Is that true, Al? Can you give me, you're muted now. If you give us a
Oh.
thumbs up.
No, I'm not sure about the grout in the holes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But then the second question related to that is, if it turns out that the building is inadequately, doesn't have enough capacity in terms of the heat pump, in terms of the wells, can more be added and then just build it and run to that junction box? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, you can always add wells.
Okay, so it's not an issue. It doesn't screw everything up. We can add on, run into the junction box, and then use the benefits from those new.
Oh, sure.
Okay, thanks.
If I might, Chris, when the systems are designed, the engineers do put in a safety factor of additional capacity over the minimum design load. So you do have a safety factor built into the number of and capacity of the wells. And part of that double check was when we drilled the initial wells in phase 1 was to do that testing to verify the thermal conductivity of the wells. But you do have additional capacity built in. Doesn't mean to say if you put an addition on in the future, did something else that you could tie into the existing diaphragm. But I just wanted to make you aware that you're not working to the razor's edge, that there are safety factors.
Well, that's part of where I'm headed with this razor's edge. We abandoned these wells, but the cracks, how significant are they? And if the stuff is packed with grout anyhow, and all we're trying to do is transfer temperature, I would think that you could get away with some of these substandard wells, even if it's not what you really wanted. And then related to that is, where are these cracks? Do we have any idea? Or is it simply you do a pressure test and it's leaking, so we've got a crack? We don't even know the nature of it. Was it a welding crack? Was it a materials crack? I'd be worried if it's a materials crack. Well, either way, I'm worried because it suggests that maybe the batch was bad, or that maybe you've got a welder who's not doing their work right.
To kind of touch on that, my understanding is if there's a leak, you don't want to utilize it, and to try to repair it, you'd have to basically dig it all out and re-put the dirt back in and try again from scratch. But case in point, you wouldn't want leaking water over, this is a long-term endeavor, and so you wouldn't want water of any sort leaking out subgrade that would start going down the route of subsidence, especially that's over by the ball fields. You wouldn't want that to start undulating. That's a thing you wouldn't necessarily mess with insofar as a substandard subgrade application.
Okay, but back to do we have any idea of the source of the crack or the leak? Except we say it's cracked. And is no one else concerned or suspicious or whatever? Is it not ever an issue that it's the batch of materials that came? Or
Yeah, no, it's the casing, Chris, that's cracked, and they sometimes crack when you're installing them into the ground. So you drill the hole, and then you have to force this casing.
jam it down, right?
Yeah, and sometimes they crack. They're ductile iron.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Tony?
Is there an additional cost to the project for these 3 new wells?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, Adam, I guess that you can continue.
If I can just share my screen here. That Tasha, do you have to enable me to share my? Oh, here it is. So if you can see the betterment matrix up on my screen, let me know if you can't see it. But basically, this is every month we kind of go over the items that are coming up insofar as additions to the project, that sort of thing. So kind of just running through this list, we have the interior educational displays. A few weeks ago, we had a kickoff meeting, and I think at the last meeting with this committee, we discussed getting an updated proposal from IKD to start the process of sort of a schematic layout of what we might want insofar as educational displays are concerned. Richard, do you have an update on that by chance?
Yes, the next day I spoke with IKD. I told them that I needed a written proposal not to exceed $10,000, which was the directive from the committee. I followed up a few days later. I still have not received anything in writing from them. I spoke with them only a couple of days ago, and I was promised they would get it to me. So as soon as I get it, I'll turn it around and then write an amendment to our contract to include their services.
Very good. The energy dashboard, we're still in the process of developing some of the end user goals and wants for what the energy dashboard might want to look like. So we'll be providing updates for that as we move forward. Room signage, the room signage updates were finalized. So there's a proposal request being developed now by the architect to modify the room signage to better suit the wayfinding needs of the school. So that'll be coming shortly. The nurse's office window, it's basically getting priced out right now insofar as adding in an additional window into that space so nurse can better view the adjacent area. The mechanical room vision panels, we talked about this as sort of a kind of part and parcel with the educational displays. One of the potential change orders in your packets tonight is actually the first part of this where we're asking for a credit back from the contractors for the very large windows looking in the mechanical space. So we'll bring it back down to a flat wall. And then as part of our discussions with IKD or whatever we decide to do for educational walls, we'll have that extra bit of money to help develop some of that educational material. The electric vehicle charging stations. This is still something we're tracking insofar as what size conduit to put into the ground to go between the building and the parking areas for future electrical vehicle stations. So we're still waiting on some updated information on what type of pipe sizing we want there. The next two items, an outdoor storage shed for bikes and scooters, and the stage curtain acoustics. These are items we've been tracking for a few weeks now. And I'll be looking actually to set up a meeting next week with the superintendent and principal and a few others just to kind of get a better sense of what these areas might mean and how we want to proceed moving forward in terms of pricing and scope and that sort of thing. So by the next meeting, we might have some more information on those. And then a new item that got added on here just to have tracked is the road entrance signage. So some of the materials I got from Ryan were for the gateway signage that's been put in around town. And so in those materials, there's some graphics about some of the other signs that are going around as far as aesthetics. There's also that those two signs, I believe the email said that they were $45,000 for both of them to be designed and built and installed to kind of give you a rough general sense of what that might cost insofar as the monument sign. Right now in sort of financial tracking for the project, and we've held $30,000 for this monument sign just to be sort of on the safe side. So that's sort of the kind of parameters that we kind of gathered insofar as data to help drive the discussion about what the monument site might want to look like.
Okay, we'll talk more about the signs a little bit later with Richard. Chris, again?
Yeah, Kelly, I'm just curious on the numbers of the classrooms. Are they the same upstairs and downstairs? Do they correspond?
No, we decided to go with a little bit of a two-tiered system. So there's a need for each space in the building to be numbered. And so we maintain the numbers as designed on the plans for all kinds of reasons. And we decided to number the instructional spaces only. And we went 1 to 53 or whatever it is. The upstairs downstairs thing doesn't quite work because the entire upstairs footprint is not downstairs. It just gets confusing for wayfinding.
So room whatever upstairs might be room 18 and downstairs it might be 3. The same room, the corresponding room above and below.
Yeah, so essentially what we did was we stood at the main office and went to our left, which brings us to kindergarten, and started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kindergarten rooms, and then went into preschool. There are instructional spaces on each side of the hall. We numbered each of those and so on. We had, I think, 35 or 36 spaces upstairs, and then we moved downstairs, started in the same location in the music area, and started with 37 and just went around the building.
Wow. Okay, I worked in a building where that was done and it really is more confusing, but most people found it more confusing to direct people to a room and so forth, but I'm sorry we didn't mention that ahead of time. But done is done. Okay, thanks.
Anything else on the betterments? Okay. A quick update on the tree removal request for proposal. So that went out to bid a couple weeks ago, and we had a pretty productive pre-bid walkthrough with potential bidders. I believe it was 6 companies that came out and expressed interest and did the walk with myself. And so those bids were originally going to be due on Tuesday. We extended it to Friday, just so there was some technical language cleanup where we needed in the proposal. So tomorrow at noon is when those bids will close. And so by the next committee meeting, we'll have some of the numbers back and we can discuss about how we want to move forward with the tree removal. And the last bit I have is with regard to the unsuitable soils. So this came up as something the committee had voted on 1 or 2 meetings ago, where there were some organic materials and soils that just weren't suitable for construction that were found on the site and needed to be removed per the geotechnical engineer's recommendation. Since then, there have been a number of other pocket areas that have come up that have had the same condition. Some of these areas are pretty similarly located over at the front of the building near the bus loop and that original area, the front entrance of the building. A couple of areas are over at the other portion of the site. One was near the pump house, and another area, most notably, was near some areas of foundations that had been poured. And I can show you some photos here as I scroll through. So it's largely this black topsoil that's might be good for planting things, but not good for structurally burying your building upon. And you can kind of see as we go through the photos where it's either dark soil or got tree roots and things of that nature. And so all that needed to be pulled out and replaced with good clean fill. So we had something sound to build put the footings on and sidewalks and that kind of thing. And a couple of cases we even found, where they had, during a pre-reconstruction, they had dumped, old bottles from 50 years ago and sort of piles in some of those spaces. So the two scopes of work that come out of this, we had hoped to have some of them in time for this meeting, but we couldn't get the numbers pulled together in time. There'll be a number of change orders coming through for remediating this soil. And that's something in line with what the committee had reviewed a couple months ago, or a couple weeks ago rather, insofar as just taking out the soil and putting it back. And so there'll be some change orders in effect to alleviate and remove these discovered soils. There's another situation at the portion of the building on the southeast side, which I'm pulling up here in a second. Kind of scroll through, where some of the foundations that have been poured, there was organic soils noted that were deeper than were expected, but still within the realm of impacting the foundations. So this was discovered because there had to be a bigger pit dug in the same general vicinity as the foundations. And as they kept digging down and down, they discovered that these soils existed. So those also need to be remediated at the recommendation of the geotechnical engineer. And some of the foundations that had been poured needed to be removed so they could get the soils out of the way, put back clean soils, and put the foundations back. We're still waiting on the final reports from that exercise from the geotechnical engineer and the testing lab. But just as these items have come up, we wanted to put this in front of the committee so you guys are aware of what's going on. So far, this doesn't appear to have impacted schedule insofar as in dates or anything of that nature. Newfield's been doing a good job of being able to move parts and pieces around and utilize materials to avoid impacting the overall workflow. But like I said, some change orders will be coming through most likely at the next committee meeting to address these discovered soils.
Randy,
Yes, go ahead, Tony.
does anybody know where these soils came from? I mean, did they reflect, I mean, have we been doing archaeological research in this area? I mean, we did something very early, but I'm wondering, why are there organic materials so deep under the surface of the soil, of the ground?
So I can speak to that a bit because we've obviously been in contact with the geotechnical engineer. What his initial findings were from both just being on site and from looking at some of the old historic documents, it appears that there was a number of construction efforts of development on the site. And so I don't know if this plan shows it or not, but they kind of showed some grading and where there might have been construction access. So over the past, we'll say 100 years or so, there's been another number of additions where the soils and grading have been changed throughout the site. So there's different layers that have been moved around and placed on top of one another. So there were borings done, soil borings that go down and examine what the soils are. We did those before we started the site, as is typical. And in the location of the building, the locations of the borings didn't observe the particular conditions we're observing now. It's in this corner. We just didn't happen to do a boring because you can't test every single particular location. So in this particular corner, they didn't happen to do one. Same thing with right here in front of the building. It appears to be, like, especially in the case of bottles, it might have just been where there was some extra soil. They were clearing it out of the way. They didn't know a school was coming, 30 years down the road, and it was fine at the time. But all this is to say, this is some of the substance that we want to get out of the geotechnical engineer's report to kind of identify what happened, so to speak, and give us their official take on the matter. But that's, again, this is some of the phone calls that we've had to kind of give some color to it as we go through the process.
I guess a follow-up to that, and I'll confess I'm coming up on a couple decades removed from soil science classes I took in my undergraduate career when I was earning a degree in natural resource management. So I'm a little rusty, so I might not be using the right terminology even, but beneath organics, where you'd expect to find organics layer, right, at the top, you have your subsoils and your substratum, and then kind of bedrock below all that. So if I have that generally, right, we're obviously finding pockets, large pockets or seams of organics, down where you wouldn't expect to find organics. Is it safe to say, though, I mean, when you guys have now, dug more, you've bored more, whatever, whatever depth you've now gone to, and you think you've gotten out deep enough, and this is where the last of the problem area is there a certain depth that we can say that no matter what's down there, if you place a building on it, like let's say that this is ridiculous, but let's say somebody, unbeknownst to us today, dug down into the bedrock and buried, oodles of plastic milk jugs. There's a pocket of plastic milk jugs down there. Now we're building, is there some point where compression and settling just isn't going to be a factor because it's such a far depth down? Like, we're obviously focusing on something that's in that sort of subsoil, substratum area, but can we be rest assured that, given that there's obviously some weird things that have gone on, that there's not more weird things happening below the weird stuff we've already discovered, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So that's a good question. So that type of direction, so to speak, is something that we're seeking moving forward for areas of the site. So after we discovered, the area in the building foundation, obviously that triggered a much more scrutinous review of what's going on before we start building the rest of the building. So the geotechnical engineer had additional test pits dug over in, especially like in area A where we haven't dug yet or haven't done the foundations yet, and in other areas throughout the site to confirm that we don't believe there's an issue with the soils within the building footprint that would affect the foundations. And then outside the building footprint, obviously there's more parts to the site, sidewalks, etc. That what you're talking about insofar as like a rule to go by, that's something that Newfield has been looking to get some direction on, so we can drive this forward and not have get panicked every time we dig down a little bit and see some soils. Is there the question for the geotechnical engineer is there some level? Okay, if you're just having a sidewalk, as long as it's clear 3 feet below, doesn't matter what's below it. To your question, that's what we're looking to get some better clarification.
Right. Because obviously it seems to me that there's some matter of depth below the base of foundation walls, where just because it was fine down at the bottom of the wall doesn't mean you're fine because of it. So that's okay. But you're asking the right questions and you're looking for the same information. So thank you.
Exactly the same thing. Yes. And so we believe we've cleared the building now, and now it's just the rest of the site. So we're not going at this ad nauseum for every bush and planter until the end of the project.
Tony?
Is there any chance that this is an area that was graded or built upon, disturbed while they were putting up the dam and the dikes in the 50s? I mean, it's very close to the dike areas.
I don't remember the exact dates that the geotech mentioned, but he did reference sort of a two-tiered development of the site where there was initial, I think he said reservoir, maybe that's what you're talking about, in the area that results some clearing and land grading. And then later the school building was built. So there were a couple of iterations to the site development. Again,
I'm wondering as part of clearing for the reservoir and the dikes and that stuff, whether they buried trees and debris and stuff, and then with all the subsequent building, it got buried.
That's entirely possible, and that's what we've asked him to spell out is what his findings were. But my initial take from some of those conversations aligns with that level of that time frame.
Interesting. There was a village under the reservoir at one point, and so there was a lot of change that went on.
Anything else on the unsuitables? Otherwise, like I said, we'll have items to act on and review at the next meeting. Okay.
All right, seeing none, then Adam and Scott, is that the conclusion of your report for today? Okay. Then that brings us to the architect's update. And Richard or Jeff, who's?
Sure, I'll start. Adam did a very good job explaining the unsuitable materials that were discovered. We have been asking the similar questions that they've been asking, and Tony has been bringing up what's the history of the site. We're not that concerned about burying unsuitables if they're deep enough under paved areas, under sidewalks, and we're looking for the geotechnical engineer to make sure that we have adequate cushion of suitable material on top of the organics. But when it came to the foundations, we were very concerned. Newfield did the right thing. They pulled out the footings that were on top of the organics and are in the process of placing new footings based upon my observations. They probably have already placed concrete when I was out there on Tuesday. It looked like they were ready to do that. So all the proper steps are being done. I have on the agenda in front of me under my item, school entrance signage along Warrenville Road, but that's already been addressed, I believe, in Adam's report. I do not have anything to add. I know that there's been an RFP issued for signage for various town sites, part of an overall signage program. I believe that was in the committee's packet. You can see the example graphics that were prepared by that consultant. I don't know the status of whether or not they've selected a contractor to do that signage, but presumably this sign in front of the school along Warrenville Road will be done in a graphic that's part of that overall signage program. We really aren't involved in that graphic work.
If you don't mind, Richard, can we just, Ryan, do you have an update on?
So I believe the RFP window closed last week and we have not yet, well, I have not yet been brought in. I guess staff, I believe, have started to review submissions, but we haven't yet met as a team to review everything kind of more globally, but we'll have more information on that front soon. So we are just beginning to evaluate the submissions.
You do have some images of what the signage will look like, though.
Yeah, so we provided specifications for people to bid on. So we told them this is what we want it to be. And so that's what Adam was provided that I think he said is part of the.
Yes, it's in the package. I mean, they're.
Yeah, so you can see renderings of what we told the would-be contractors what we're looking for. So I just don't have the information in terms of in front of my fingertips of what they proposed for pricing to do the work, but we do have the design specs already put to bed.
It was with a little bit of disagreement that the Board of Ed and the council approved the name of the school. So there is a sense that at some point we may want something a lot more interesting than Mansfield Elementary School, but nonetheless, it's been approved by both parties.
Sorry to interrupt, Richard, with that.
That's no problem. That's the only item that was on my agenda. I see later on the agenda, there's discussion of FF&E and IT, and hopefully we can obtain approvals for going to the state. So I'll stand by and wait for that to happen. I'll turn it over to the next person in tonight's meeting.
I think for signage, the only action item really here was to present those materials and to start getting the ideas percolating such that when we talked about the next time, we might be able to talk about how they want to proceed moving forward insofar as function and design and developing some sort of something to put out for someone to design and install. So mostly just a brainstorming, food for thought type idea.
Okay. In that case, then we'll turn it over to Al for the construction update.
Okay. I'll share my screen here for some photos. Okay, so this photo here is taken from the very east side of the property. It shows the B wing at the bottom here. This is the eastern B wing. These footings right here that are poured now, but at the time they were not poured. This is where we had to replace the foundations right here. These footings here, we had some of those prepped, but we were unable to complete those. So by early next week, we'll have all the footings done in B and all the walls done in C. So we're pretty much turning this whole space over to the steel contractor once the concrete comes up to 75% strength, which is about a week of cure time based on the concrete that we're pouring. This
Could I make a request? Could you tell us where on this image the cafeteria is, and that will help me orient? I'm still having trouble getting oriented.
This is the cafeteria is in area B, right in this area, I believe.
Go up to the first one. I can help you out. Go up to the first image you have.
Right here.
All right. So basically, to the far right is to the front towards us is the gym. Right next to that. Yeah, right next to that is the cafeteria to the left. Outside of that left-right retaining wall would be the outdoor dining area. To the left next were the footings that are about to be poured or they just were poured is a classroom wing on the east, which is part of the B wing. It's one of the L's. And that rectangle in the middle is a stairwell, right?
Yep.
To the left of that is the other L-shaped classroom wing, right? And then to the back is the music classrooms and the art. And then it's cropped at the top, but beyond that will be the A wing, which will be the pre-K, kindergarten, administration, the main entrance to the right there at the top, yeah. So this is basically about what, 2/3 of the building?
Yeah. Yep.
This is the 2-story wing.
Correct.
Look at the size of it to the pickup truck. That gym is going to be very large.
Yeah.
Quick question, what's the structure kind of under where the stage would be?
It's soil. It's actually built up.
Can you go back up a little
Yeah,
bit?
go back to that first image.
Actually, I have a more blown up picture here.
So basically, hold on a second. Go back to the top, that first image. Yeah, I guess that'll work. Yeah, okay.
This
So,
is stage right
yeah,
here.
Chris, basically there's a whole mechanical area down at the lower level there, and then at the first notch to the back at the top in the center is where those gang toilets are. Right, to give you an idea, and then the main grand T staircase is to the left of that, right before you hit the steel.
I understand the orientation. What I'm curious about is about where the stage is, where I imagine the stage is, there's a structure of 2 squares, 1 large rectangle. What is that? It looks like it's almost a pyramid shape.
Oh, he's talking about the formwork in the ground there, the 2 squares. I believe that's that's part of the mechanical room where you step down into it, correct?
No. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have a zoom here.
Let me grab the plan quick while you're going through that.
To the right up there. That stuff. What is all that?
I can't see it too well, Chris. I don't know. This is the
Right
stage.
there, you're on it. Yeah, I'm just wondering why it's set that way.
I know we got pier. I'm not even sure if this might just be a pier box that's ready to be set somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
This used to be their whole staging area, which they're moving up here now because they're getting ready for this up here. So.
And it looks like the actual stage is going to be towards us of those 2 squares anyway. That's still the mechanical room in there. That's in the back.
So going back, this is the westerly part of B wing. They've started doing the decking on the main level. And the steel for the upper level is coming early next week. They have all the steel for this area, which is in their shop. And they'll be bringing this out next week in preparation of setting this after we get 75% strength in our concrete. They also have the area, the 2-story area in the back of the C area, which they'll be bringing out next week as well. This is an aerial view of the geothermal field. They'll be done drilling this week. They started doing piping today, and they'll pipe everything into a concrete vault where there's a manifold, and then there's 2 pipes that run to the new building. That's just a shot from the rear. And then this is going to be, they're backfilling the foundation walls now, waterproofing and backfilling the walls in preparation of foundations for the admin area, section A, on the main level. And this is our mock-up that we're building. This was done last week. We have the foundation retaining wall mock-up, and then we have two wall mock-ups here. One will be a metal panel mock-up, and one will be a Ipe siding sample.
Al, those pictures really, the aerial pictures in particular are good. And I'm curious if Kelly, do we have any way of putting those on the website? Or is it really just, would that be of value, do you think?
Holly, I think is on another call.
Yeah, Kelly's on another call.
Put a message in the chat. She'll be returning, but she had to step away for a few minutes.
We should be
Okay.
able, we
In
should
any
be able to
case-
add those.
Yeah, don't you
Yeah,
think,
but-
Ryan, that they're something that would be worth doing?
Yeah, we can do that. We've got the time lapse, we got the live feed, we can put in some pictures of various stages along the way.
And I think you need to include Al's artistic shot there with the morning fog.
With the what?
Make sure the guys are wearing
You
helmets.
just went right into the foundation being this and that, and you didn't acknowledge the aesthetics of it. Go scroll back up. It's just a very nice, that one. There you go.
Got some atmosphere.
See, that belongs in one of your construction journals. But great pictures. It really is terrific to see. And again, those aerials are fabulous.
There, yeah. And then this is the fire protection pump well that's installed now. And this is the footing for the pier that will support this whole side of the pump house. So this is proceeding good. We need to connect this pipe to the fire protection tank. It needs to be inspected by the town, and then we can backfill this. They're starting the pier tomorrow. So this should be complete and backfilled by next week. And that is all for pictures. But I've been sending Kelly these pictures after every meeting.
Okay.
So I'll send her these as well.
Questions for Al from the committee? Okay. All right, well then, thanks, Al, for that update.
You're welcome.
Potential change order review.
Yes. So we have 4 potential change orders ready for this evening. The first one is for storm damage repair. So this happened a couple of months ago during one of the early storms where some trees fell over and damaged some fencing, and we needed to haul the trees off. So that's the substance of that change order for $1,100. The second change order is for a concession stand roof drain tie-in. So basically, when they had a design for the stormwater system and some manholes that needed to shift based on some piping that was discovered in the ground at a different location. So this is just $265 to tie in the storm drain because of the discovered condition of the utilities. And the next 2 are credits. The first one is, I mentioned earlier, a credit for eliminating the 2 large window panes from the corridor into the mechanical space. So we can take that money and then apply it towards different elements of the building for educational displays, what have you. So that'd be a credit of $23.50. And the fourth potential change order is for a sink, where during some of the submittal reviews, they discovered that one of the sinks was listed as a higher upgraded version than needed to be. So it's a $130 credit to get the sink that we need for the area that's called out.
Okay, the supporting paperwork is provided to you in the packet. Are there questions on any of these items? Okay, is there then a motion to approve these change orders? Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I move that we accept PCO 17, 18, 21, and 23 at the meeting today, Thursday, October 14th.
Okay, Chris Kiefer. Oh, wait, you seconded it, Chris? Okay, and so the motion, I guess, would include approval of these PCO the numbers that you specified for the dollar amounts listed on the summary sheet. Okay, we have a motion from Chris, second from Chris. Are there any other questions? Then all in favor of approving these change orders, give me a sign. Any opposed or any abstentions? Okay, so that looks like that passed unanimously. Okay, then FF&E and IT packages. And I'm, Adam, are you presenting those or?
I think
Richard.
Richard?
Yeah, Randy, were those presented at the last meeting? I know they were just presented.
Yes, they
to the
were.
Board of Ed.
Yes, they were. So we
presented
had
at the last meeting.
Susan was here and Jamie was here to describe the packages to us. I don't know if there's any updates or anything different that we should be aware of.
No, the budgets that were presented last time are the same. What we have done is bundled all of the paperwork and the specifications in the format that the state looks toward. They want a bid form, they want the advertisement for bids, they want the general conditions, all of those things that were put into the documents that are dated October 7th, 2021, and those were made available to this committee. And then there's a form. You've seen this form before. Again, it was in your packet, State Form SCG 042. And I can share with you, share my screen if you'd like. If you can see, let's see. Can you see this state form?
Not yet.
It's a boring state form, though. It's okay.
It
It was in our packet. We saw it in our packet.
Yeah.
Right, it requires signatures on the part of the chair of the Board of Ed, chair of the building committee, the superintendent and the architect before it can go to the state. We have a meeting, what's called a prep meeting scheduled tomorrow with the state, with the plan reviewer, Barbara Fabiani. She's done reviews on this previously. And so we expect that it should go through without difficulty. Typically, she has comments. We'll address those comments, and then we hope that we will get through the state review process, I believe by
25th.
October 25th.
October 25th, thank you. So that's the game plan. Unless there are any particular questions, I'd like to get the committee to act on it later on tonight. The Board of Ed will have to act on it as well. But if there are particular questions you want us to address, I see Susan's on the line as well. Maybe we can address them.
Okay, Chris, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I have a real quick question. After looking this over again after the last meeting, I was just wondering, the two items that are ineligible for reimbursement are the outdoor maintenance equipment and the small wares. The small wares doesn't matter so much, but I'm wondering what we use now for that outdoor maintenance equipment, backhoe and that kind of stuff, and whether or not we can piggyback on Public Works, or we really need to have our own equipment on site there.
Alan, I don't know if you're there. Or Kelly, I think Kelly might still be occupied.
Hi, this is Alan, and yeah, there is definitely some equipment that could be transferred over, such as the tractor, and there's some other outside equipment. Yes.
From our experience, the state typically does not reimburse grounds maintenance. They typically reimburse only building maintenance. So these are the rules that they established. That's why they were categorized in the worksheet that Susan prepared as ineligible in anticipation of them making that determination.
So can we save a few bucks there, or we feel it's really necessary to get these additional items?
Just because it's in the list doesn't mean you have to purchase it. We've included everything in the list, and depending upon how the budget goes, depending on how bidding goes, the option of purchasing any of that equipment is entirely up to the committee. But we've set up a mechanism for you to be able to get unit prices from vendors and then ultimately make the decision to go ahead and purchase after the state has reviewed these documents and after the state has said, okay, you can go out to bid, or you can go to the state contract list and purchase directly from state contracts. But we wanted to go through, we have to go through this hurdle. If any of it is potentially reimbursable, we wanted to go through this process.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that we can certainly just take this out to bid, and then we get the numbers back and you guys may say, you know, we can get better pricing if we purchase it through a state contract, or if we just, you know, like you mentioned, maybe piggyback with DPW. That certainly is an option as well, but you don't have to make that decision today as to whether or not you want to bid it, because once you bid it, once the bids come in, that's when you decide if what you want to move forward with.
Okay, thanks. Chris Kiefer?
Yeah, as I remember, we were like $200,000 over on this budget. Is that right? Are we talking? Yeah.
I want to say 130 or 160, something like that. I've forgotten the number off the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah, well, so there's two components. We have the FF&E, the furniture, and we have technology. And I believe the FF&E is 150, I think, over their budget.
Somewhere in that, yeah.
Over the budget that's in the total project master budget. And then technology is more. I think it's more like 250.
Yeah.
Over the budget.
So where does that put us? I mean, they say you're good for whatever amount we had previously allowed, because they did it by the budget. They approved based on our budget.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. In both cases.
Yes.
Wow.
But this is just a budget, so we have to wait until the numbers actually come back to see where we actually are going to land.
When you get bids. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I did have a request from a teacher that I talked him down from having a door and a walkway, but would like to be able to view the solar panels, to actually have a camera on the solar panels. Is this the moment to mention that and to ask that it possibly be included, or at least wired up to the roof somehow?
That would be a change order to Newfield. We would have to put a conduit through the roof, wire it for a future camera mount. That work is base building work, and so we would have to issue a PR proposal request to Newfield for that portion. The actual camera itself could be a technology item that we could add on to the security vendor, perhaps. But it would be by change order process.
So I'm curious though, I figured it might work like the security camera stuff. I assume we didn't get dinged or won't get dinged for more charges there, given that they hadn't had cameras in the previous one on the west end of the building. And now it seems they did when I looked at it, this plan. So could there be one popped on the roof just like they did put them on the end of the building?
Well, here again, we can put it in the plan. The technology subcontractor will pick it up as an additional camera, and he'll ask for money for it. So I think you should expect it end up being a change order.
And same with those cameras that needed to go and were not already placed on the west end. Are they also change order items already?
No, I think those actually were some relocation of cameras. So I don't think there's a net add, if I recall this correctly. Jeff is on the line, maybe he can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I believe you're right, Rick. They didn't put them exactly where Chris recommended, but they're on the west side there.
Yeah.
Why would you want cameras looking at solar panels? They're pretty inert.
Yeah, well, there are two reasons. One of the ones that was mentioned was, my God, you got a lot of value in there. You'd certainly want to keep your eye on it because you can't look at it very easily. So you spent a lot of money on this asset and you can't see it. Boy, that doesn't make sense. But that was a secondary reason in this case. It was really as a teaching tool so that you could see whether very directly, you could illustrate that the panels were now in shade. How are they producing? The panels are now being rained on. How are they producing? What difference, if the rate of rainfall is such and such, how much production is lost or gained or whatever, that kind of thing. It was a teaching tool.
I have solar panels on my house. I have a system called Solar Edge that monitors the production of energy. I can look out the window to see if it's raining or snowing.
Yeah, I get it. But
I
some
don't see
kids
any
needed a
point in
little.
spending money on this.
So Ryan and then Chris McNamara.
I'm going to apologize. I was multitasking, so I might have missed a lead into this that makes everything I thought I was hearing make a lot more sense. So I will apologize up front if I missed key context. But what I thought I heard being reported on by Chris, did I gather that there's some conversations that were had with teachers about things that they wanted to be viewable from their classrooms, and now we're contemplating building that into the project? Is that?
It was simply a request. And it was actually a middle school teacher, so they don't know necessarily what the precise conditions are down at the other school, and using, again, this as a teaching tool to say, okay, how much of the solar panels we can see it just got covered with clouds.
Okay.
Look what happens to production.
Okay, so I'm definitely not going to comment, or weigh in on with an opinion on whether or not, that what's being proposed is a good idea or not. I don't feel qualified to say that. What I guess I was going to offer, now that I guess confirm what I thought I was hearing. I just think we want to be careful. This is more a suggestion, I guess, to the committee. I know Kelly's not here right now; she had to step away. But I really don't think, as a general rule, we want committee members kind of seeking out feedback from faculty about how they want spaces adjusted, and then kind of trying to work it in this way. There's really a process for that. We have a school administration that's kind of running a shop here, and I just.
Hey,
we talking
Ryan,
about,
thank you, Ryan. I was asked to pursue the education side of this, and so that's what I did. I'm not trying to subvert any system, and I thought it was a reasonable suggestion to bring up, and I thought it would probably be simple, but obviously it's not favored in the architect land or in the committee land, at least as far as I can tell. So I did not think it was an unreasonable idea, and I thought I'd bring it up.
I mean, I guess it's a question we could discuss at another time or with more thought to it. But in terms of the package that's before us, that we wouldn't need to modify that package. We can just go ahead with, because Jamie has everything in there that he needs as far as technology. And, I mean, if there's other educational things that we decide at a different time point, we can deal with those. Any other questions specifically on the FF&E or IT packages that we've heard about, Chris?
I was just going to move that we vote to go forward with them.
Okay, there is some very precise language we need to use for this particular motion.
And that we need Mary for, I'm sure.
Okay. Mary, do you want to make a motion to certify these plans?
Vote of confidence, Chris. Thank you. I would like to make a motion that we as a school building committee hereby certify that these final plans and project manuals for FF&E and technology as prepared for bidding and dated October 7th, 2021, and the professional cost estimates completed in accordance with Level 3 of ASTM International Standard E1557, Standard Classification of Building Elements and Related Site Work, Uniformat 2 for this project, also dated October 7th, 2021, have been reviewed and approved for this project on the dates shown above.
Okay, thank you, Mary. So we have a motion. Is there a second? Chris McDevoe, I think I saw your hand first. Any final questions or discussion? Then all in favor of approving this motion, give me a sign. Okay, any opposed or any abstentions? I see no abstentions. So, okay, that passes then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy, I just have a
Yes.
thought to share with Chris for feedback to his folks. The amount of cameras that are on the building seem to be quite extensive, and you have a lot of potential, I'm not going to say overlap, but you can see well around the building, which would answer the question, if anyone was tampering with them, you'd see it from the existing cameras that are already going to be installed in the building. And it's hard to tamper with them without having some equipment like ladders and things that you'd most likely see. And with that great system that we might consider putting in for how students can monitor the building systems, that would be the teaching opportunity to run over to that window and look there to say, look at how the needles are going different ways and how does that correlate with what's happening outside, and so you don't have to have a camera up there. Just a thought.
There might be simpler ways to get some of that information. Okay, so that concludes our agenda for this evening. So is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move we adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And second, Tony. Then all in favor, you can sign off, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.